Hi everyone, welcome back to Quest for Literature. Today we are going to see the summary and analysis of Elegy Written in a Country Churchyard by Thomas Gray. At the end of the video, I will be discussing the most frequently asked 25 MCQs from Elegy Written in a Country Churchyard. So watch the video till the end. Thomas Gray's Elegy Written in a Country Churchyard is the most important and widely read example of elegiac poetry in 19th century English literature. This poem is Gray's response to seeing a village churchyard near his mother's house in the small village of Stockpox in England. The pastoral scene inspires Gray's meditation on mortality and remembrance among the common people of England's rural agricultural society. Gray ends his exploration on a personal note. Using the persona of an observer, an old villager, Gray describe himself from a distance and disclose how he hopes to be remembered by creating his own epitaph. Gray began to compose this particular poem in 1742 and published in 1751. Gray wrote this poem in two versions. The first as early as in 1742 after the death of his friend Richard West, and second around 1748 after the death of one of his aunt. The published poem of 1751 contained major revisions, notably a shift in focus at the end of the poem to Gray's own reflections on how posterity will remember him as a poet. Elegies are generally poems that centered on the death of a specific person, such as Milton's Lycidas, but Gray used the elegiac form to explore death as a universal experience that makes mankind understand and accept. Elegies can take any poetic form, but Gray uses the elegiac stanza, which came into style during his time and which he preferred. The elegiac stanza form consists of 4-line stanzas or quatrains written in iambic pentameter and with an ABAB rhyme scheme. The iambic pentameter is often considered the most natural English meter. The poem Elegy Written in a Country Churchyard can loosely be divided into 5 groups of stanzas. Stanza 1 to 5 explore the landscape, the country churchyard and its sounds, terrain, flora and fauna, and most importantly, the physical and metaphoric stage on which Gray's meditation will play on. Stanza 6 to 7 briefly but emotionally describe the familial and rustic activities that the rude forefathers can no longer enjoy. In stanzas 8 to 18, the most sustained discussion of death as the great equalizer of social class. Gray explored the contrast between the wealthy classes and common laborers, all of whom are made equal in death. Stanzas 19 to 23 centers on villagers, diseased rustic people, and their inherent value as object of memory. The last group, stanza 24 to 32, include the speaker's own epitaph and describes the speaker's meditation on how his poetic life will be remembered. Now let us see some detailing of the poem. The poem begins by depicting the landscape on which the speaker will begin his meditation on death. Scene is of eponymous rural country churchyard at dusk, when the lowly herd winds slowly over the lea and the ploughman plowed his weary way, leaving the surrounding to the speaker alone. The diction of solemn and formal, incorporating images of pastoral life, balanced by Gray's iambic pentameter, which is suited to describe the gently rolling terrain. The speaker's attention shifts from living to the dead, specifically the rude forefathers, who are forever in their narrow cell. Here, Gray established the principal characters in the elegy, the rural villagers who spend their life growing crops and raising livestock, and whose life are bound by confines of their village lives. This low bed in debt mirror the straw built shed they and their families live in. Their quiet death contrasts with scenes from their lives in which children cry out, their shroud turned to shower him with kisses. In stanzas 8 to 18, the speaker shifts from his depiction of rural life and death to a sustained defense of the rustic villages against the wealth and powerful classes. The personification of ambition and grandeur creates concrete targets for Gray's continued attack on these abstract attribute of the wealthy and powerful. Gray contrasts these attributes with the simple, honorable qualities of the rustic villagers, their useful toil, the familial joy, and the concludes with the stark reality that the path of glory leads but to the grave. Ambition and grandeur and the villagers' domestic joy all came to the same end. In this group of stanzas, Gray also introduced the argument that death, the great leveler, is indifferent to social classes among men and evident by the memorial with which they hope to be remembered. The villager who lies in the grave without a monument or with only a rude monument is in the same state as the wealthy person whose grave is marked by stone, urn, or animated bust. Continuing his meditation on death and social status, Gray adds another dimension to his commentary. He observes that among the diseased villagers are some who had the potential to be brilliant or powerful, but were denied those things by accident of death. Perhaps some buried in the country churchyard had a heart once pregnant with celestial fire, or hands that the road of ember might have sowed. In stanzas 19 to 23, Gray elaborates the benefit of having been born in a simple rural life. Far from the madding crowd, ignoble strife. This sentiment further confirms that the speakers sympathize are with the common people, not the wealthy. More importantly, however, rural life, the cold, sequented valley of life, keep the villagers free from the blush of indigenous shame, the corruption inherited in the urban life. In this session, Gray insists on an imperative no matter what social class one is in. One must be remembered and have a marker memorialize one's death. In stanzas 24 to 32, Gray's speaker imagines how he will be remembered. Gray uses the character of a villager to describe his speaker's behavior and death as village poet. The epitaph on his tombstone describe his essential characteristics, that he was marked by the melancholy, that he was like other villagers, a youth to fortune and to fame unknown. Now let us see the 25 most frequently asked questions from this particular poem. First one, Elegy Written in a Country Churchyard by Thomas Gray, followed the death of whom? Richard West. Second one, who popularized the poem Elegy Written in a Country Churchyard among the literary circle? Horace Walpole. Third one, how many stanzas are there in Gray's Elegy Written in a Country Churchyard? 32. Thomas Gray belongs to dash Graveyard School of Poetry. Which poem represents the height of Gray's poetic achievement? Elegy Written in a Country Churchyard. The poem Elegy Written in a Country Churchyard was first published by Robert Dawsley. Who wrote the preface to the poem Elegy Written in a Country Churchyard? Horace Walpole. What is the original title of the poem Elegy Written in a Country Churchyard? Stanza wrote in a country churchyard. Which line from the elegy was used as the title of a novel by Thomas Hardy? Far from the madding crowd. What is the meter of the poem Elegy Written in a Country Churchyard? Iambic pentameter. What are the stanzas in this poem called? Heroic quatrain. Identify the rhyme scheme of the poem. AB, AB. Which country churchyard is believed to have been inspired for this elegy? Stockport Churchyard. What is the first line of the poem? The curfew tolls the knell of the parting day. The poem stress on dash, equalizing nature of death. The opening line of the poem are set at evening. The famous poet translated a part of this poem into Latin. Who is it? Shelley. The inevitable hour in the poem is the hour of death. Which bird complains in the third stanza? An owl. Whom does the owl complain about? Those who trespass the sacred bower. The moon. Who are the three famous figures mentioned in this poem? Hampden, Cromwell, and Milton. The poet began writing this poem in 1942. When was the poem completed by the poet? 1950. When was the poem published? 1951. In 1957, Thomas Gray was offered the post of poet laureate, but he refused it. That's the end of today's session. Thank you all for listening. If you find the video is good, like it as well as share it with your friends. And if you are not yet subscribed to my channel, do subscribe and click on the bell icon and enable all option. Till the time we meet next, stay tuned to Quest for Literature. Keep reading and know the world.